First subsection of this clause, 8.2, prescribes the requirements regarding the communication with customers. Defining the process of communication with customer is important because it helps organization to improve its products or service, avoid complaints, or resolve them in a better way and ultimately lead to enhanced customer satisfaction. This communication needs to include the following: providing the information regarding the product or service. This can include the brochures, catalogs, and other information prior to purchase, but also necessary information needed after the purchase of the product or service, such as the instruction manual, information about storing and disposition of the products, and etc. Handling contracts or orders, including changes. This means that the organization must define process of collecting orders, who creates and signs the contracts, and how the changes in orders or contracts will be managed. Obtaining customer feedback, including complaints. Knowing your customer opinion about your products or service is very important and can help you identify the opportunities for improvement, so the organization needs to determine how this information will be collected and analyzed. Handling and controlling the customer property. If your production and service provision process includes dealing with customer property, like for example in the case when the customer is providing raw materials for production of the products delivered to him, the company must identify those raw materials and segregate them from the rest of the raw materials, and if some unplanned change happens to the customer property, like loss or damage, the customer must be notified. Specific requirements for contingency actions. For example, what actions should be taken to mitigate the adverse effects of unintended use of products. For example, what to do when the baby swallows a piece of toy. Next important subsection of the ISO 9001 is for organization to determine requirements for products and services offered to a particular customer. Meaning that the organization must consider any applicable statutory and regulatory requirements related to the product and services, and requirements considered necessary by the organization itself. The organization must also determine whether it can meet the claims for products and services it offers. For example, the company is able to deliver the product to the customer, but it cannot produce the required quantity in the defined time frame. The standard does not require this to be documented. However, it can be recorded in the product specification or some other similar document. The next subsection, review of requirements related to products and services, is one of the most important ones because failing to deliver products and services offered to a customer may lead to a lot of inconvenient situations like penalties and lawsuits, or at least loss of good reputation among the customers. In order to prevent that, the organization must conduct a review of requirements for products and services before committing to supply the customer. This review should include the following: requirements stated by the customer, for example, the requirements of the customer stated in the purchase order, then the requirements not stated by the customer but necessary for the intended use. For example, if the company produced toys for children, the customer does not have to state the requirements for toys to be produced out of safe materials. Such requirements implies that the requirements of the organization itself. The company usually have its own requirements for the products it delivers that can be the same as the customer requirements and even more strict than the customer. Legislation. In some cases, production of some products is defined by the legislation. For example, in the pharmaceutical industry, and the contract order requirements differ from the previously expressed. In case there is a change in the requirements after the contract is signed and delivery agreed, the company must ensure that those changes are resolved before delivery. The relevant documentation is amended and the relevant persons are aware of the changed requirements. For example, the customer may require bigger quantity of the products to be delivered, and in such case the CEO must consult the production manager to determine whether the new requirement can be met, and if it's possible, the order for production must be changed and maybe even new purchase of raw materials must be conducted. All these requirements must be confirmed by the organization before accepting the order or the contract. Organization may also decide to retain records on the results of this review or any new requirement for the product or service. This is usually recorded in the document called Customer Requirement Checklist.